Hi, and welcome to Photo IQ. I'm your instructor, Gus Cantivero. This is Unit 3 for Camera Basics, where we're going to talk all about the camera body. Okay, next, as we get familiar with our camera body, you're going to want to identify what kind of physical controls it has. So, for example, on this Nikon D5300, you can see on the top there is a mode dial selector, as well as an on-off switch, your shutter button, exposure compensation button, and then there's an info button. And then on the back side of the camera, you're going to see that there's a thumb wheel, a playback button, trash, a few different buttons there, menu. And there's also a flip-out touchscreen. So if you have a Nikon, it's going to have a dual button system. So a number of the buttons are going to have more than one purpose. So you're going to have to press one button as well as spin the thumb wheel, or press one button and another button to throw images away. So you're going to, again, need to refer specifically to your manual to know. Another question you're going to want to ask is if it's possible to remap the buttons. Can you change what the buttons do to suit your specific needs? Maybe there's a feature that you would like to use more often, and if you were able to set a custom button to do that, then it would make it much easier for you to turn on or off that feature. The Sony and the Fujis both do that quite a lot. They have a lot of buttons that are remappable, if that's a word, reprogrammable, so that you can specify what feature you want to be on what button. And I definitely encourage you to dive into that menu and look and see what buttons can be remapped. Next, does your camera have a touchscreen? If so, you're going to want to know what features that touchscreen supports. I'm going to bring the Fuji over here because this one has a touchscreen, and now you can see my screen back. It has touch focus, right? So I can press on the things that I want to be in focus, and right now I just have a lens cap on and I have a manual lens on, which doesn't even have autofocus, but it'll still show you what can be done. And if I swipe to the right, I can change my viewfinder mode. If I flip up, it'll give me my color histogram. Switch down, and it'll give me a level. Okay, that's really handy. One other cool feature is that, so here's a little landscape I just pulled over to the side of the road and I took this. You can, just like with a smartphone, you can zoom in to check your focus, and then pinch to zoom out and scroll around, and then you can actually swipe to go through your images. Okay, next we need to identify what all those icons on the back of the screen actually mean. And each manufacturer is going to have their own system, of course. So not all the icons are going to be the same. Again, you have to refer to your manual to know specifically what they are, but here's the gist of what we're talking about. Everybody's going to have the basics. It's going to be how many photos do you have remaining. So on the Sony over here, in the upper left corner, that's sort of like an icon of a memory card. That's going to say 918 remaining images. On the Nikon, it's going to be over here. It's going to be in that bracket, 1.6K, so it's actually 1,000. So 1,600 images are remaining. And that's, by the way, at your current image quality. So if you have it set to small JPEG, it's going to be a very, very high number of images that you can shoot. If it's going to be full quality RAW, it's going to be a much smaller number of images to shoot that you have left to shoot. And then if you shoot some video intermixed in there, it's going to then reduce that number even more based on whatever multiple is remaining of memory. On the Canon, it's going to be over here in the lower right corner, and it's in that bracket, so 2,658. It actually tells you thousands, whereas in the Nikon, it just says 1.6K, which is a little bit funny, but whatever. Over on the Sony, again, there's a level. Okay, so a little digital level that's built in here. There's your ISO. And down here on the bottom, it says that the ISO is set currently for the thumb wheel. Okay, so that's going to be your ISO control, and then there's your ISO number. On the Nikon, ISO is very clearly on the right side in a very large circle. It says ISO 25,600. Above that one, the Canon, this one is currently set to auto in this example. Then you're going to have, here's your manual mode. Here you're in program mode. There you're in program mode on the Canon. On the Nikon, it shows you your current f-stop, which is f7.1 right in the center, and it has sort of a little, icon of an iris. On the Sony, it's going to be F, and on this particular example, I had a manual, an adapted lens attached. That was a manual lens that didn't tell the camera what f-stop it was at, so it just has a dash dash. It doesn't know what f-stop the lens was at. It's manual focus mode right here. This is an AFA, so autofocus auto. On the Canon up here, there's one shot. One shot is your autofocus mode. So you're going to hit your shutter speed, your shutter button halfway. It'll acquire focus, but then it won't change that focus. So you can have to press it, get your focus, recompose your image by moving your lens across, hit it again, and then you'll get your exposure with the focus from that first point. We're going to talk much more about that. But anyway, there's going to be a lot of information that's on these screens, and they're all located in different places. Once you learn what the words mean, though, you'll be okay to understand from brand to brand, and you'll pick it up much quicker. But especially like on Sony, there's so much stuff on the screen, you're definitely going to need to refer to your manual in order to know specifically what some of those things mean. Up on the top, it just tells you what your format of the images are, what your image quality is set to. On Canon, it's much simpler. It's just large, and that means JPEG. If it was RAW, it would just say RAW. Likewise, on the Nikon, on the bottom, it says large JPEG, fine quality. So there's even a little qual there, abbreviated for quality. So there's going to be a lot of information that's contained there. Sometimes I think on the Sony it gives you more information than you really need or want, but nevertheless it's there. So you're going to need to know how to read that screen. So we talked about touch screens, but what kind of screen do you have? Is it a touch screen, but is it an articulating screen? Is it one that comes all the way around to selfie mode? For example, on the T7i, and a lot of different cameras now are doing these fully articulating screens where the screen is on one side, there's a hard plastic shell on the other, so you can actually flip this closed and you'll have the screen fully protected when it's stored. That's a really cool feature. It protects it from getting bashed and knocked around. You can then pull it out and you can rotate it 360 degrees, which makes it gives it the ability to shoot in selfie mode, which is pretty cool. If you wanted to do like a vlog, or instead of using a smartphone, you want to get a nicer, really ultra wide angle shot with a fisheye lens or something like that, you can spin it around and see what's in focus and what's in the composition. The more frequent and older design is this articulating screen that you see on Sony's. So let's just bring this over here and I'll give you a live demo here. Okay, so I have two brands of cameras. One is a Sony and one is a Fuji. You can see my nice and dirty screen. This will flip up all the way there and it'll pull away. Okay, so you have that. It can go down to a lower mode so you can actually shoot kind of like over your head and see it. Or if you were gonna shoot, I don't know, it's kind of a weird use, but if you were shooting vertically, you would be able to not need to stand behind the camera. I don't know if you'd be like spying on people around corners, I don't know. Or you can go this way so you can see it. Then the eyepiece gets in the way, pull it out a little bit, okay? Then if we bring the Fuji over here, this has a little bit more articulation. So you would be able to, there's a little finger groove here, which you'd hit, and this pulls it out. So that goes vertical. It also goes in the low mode like that, but there's another interesting feature about it. Put it back here and there's a button, a little release catch here. Do that and it comes out that way. So now when you're shooting vertically, you also get that same benefit of being able to look down at the finder instead of having to put your face behind it. So the Sony only goes this way and this way. The Fuji goes both of those in addition to that way. There's still a lot of cameras. That's still not as cool as having the fully articulating screen like the Rebel. And pretty much everything in that range is going to have that now. I believe half the Olympuses and the Panasonics and everybody is integrating this. Even some of the Fujis have a fully articulating screen. Sony so far is the only one that hasn't figured out how to do it, and I don't believe that they haven't figured it out. I don't believe that they think that it's a priority. Not really sure why, because it is kind of a nice feature. I would like to have it. To be able to do it a selfie mode or vlog or something like that with one of these cameras, you have to have another monitor sitting on top of it facing toward you. And that just adds bulk and expense, and it's just unnecessary. So next, moving over to the viewfinder up here, there's gonna be on every camera a little wheel that's located either on the right side or the left side of the viewfinder. And you can see it here. Okay, this is the Sony and this is the Fuji. Each one of them looks a little bit different. That is called your diopter adjustment. A diopter is for if you wear glasses, when you look through the viewfinder, the distance at which you can focus is going to be different than someone who's using just their naked eye. So if you are sharing your camera with someone who has glasses, like let's say, you know, you want to just like hand this over to your friend and say, here, can you take a picture of me or take a picture of whatever? Or someone just says, oh, can I use your camera? Just remember that in order for them to see through it properly, they're going to have to adjust the diopter. Otherwise, everything is going to be blurry. And maybe you'll get the camera back, or someone gave you a camera and said, here, you know, you can have it. And you look through it and you say, I can't focus on anything. I don't understand why. And then you'll say, oh, I'll just use the screen back. But that's not perfect for every situation. So you'll just keep in mind there's a diopter adjustment here, and that'll make it so that you want to adjust that so that it's right to you. So hit that wheel all the way to one direction and look through it, and then dial it slowly back to the point where things are in focus. And then just kind of play with it a little bit in that range, and then settle on a spot that you don't have any eye strain. So look through it, adjust it, take it away, refocus on the horizon, bring it back up, look through it again, and make sure that 2 or 3 times in a row that you can focus on the image inside the viewfinder without any eye strain whatsoever. You do not want eye strain from that. If you're struggling to focus on it and you're having to squint or something like that, it's not adjusted properly, or you might need glasses or contacts or something. So you want to make sure that you set it to something that's comfortable and then leave it there. Don't change it. If someone else borrows your camera and they adjust it, make sure that you adjust it back to the way that you want it so it's comfortable for you. You don't want to be straining your eye when you look through the viewfinder. Does your camera have an EVF or an electronic viewfinder? If you have a DSLR, you don't have an EVF because it's going to be an optical viewfinder, meaning what you see through that viewfinder lens, the eye cup, is what's actually through the lens. That's the amount of light that's visible. So if you have an EVF, you can do things like adjust the brightness of it. You can adjust variable things like sometimes color intensity or sharpness, or you can set it up so that there's color effects that will be previewed. So if there's a film simulation mode or low saturation or toy camera, there's all different kinds of modes that you can have on there. You'll be able to preview that effect through the viewfinder. The next thing about it is the sensor activation. Okay, so every one of these is going to have a auto sense capability. You can see in the eye cup, there is a little rectangle that has you can see kind of like a light emitting from there. That's actually an infrared, which you can't see with your naked eye. And if I put my finger there to mimic my face going up to the eye cup, you'll see that it'll disable the back screen and put the lens right there. And you can see inside the viewfinder is the image. All right, so if I take my finger off there, pull the camera back, and the back screen is then lit up again. So I'll come over to here, wake it up, and you can see the back screen is on. And then we'll put the camera right up to it. And on the top in the square of the viewfinder, you can see the sensor is there, whereas on the XT3 it's on the bottom side. So it's just a little bit of a different layout. And if I put that right there, the same thing happens. And then one other thing we're going to show you is these are changeable. You can actually take that off. This is not the default eye cup. This is one that I bought third party because it was much more comfortable and blocked out stray light. So you can see the way it attaches is grooves. And then, oh, I need two hands. There we go, clips on. Next thing we're gonna look at is the AV ports, or the audio video ports. Every camera coming out now is going to have some kind of combination of AV ports, USB, or micro HDMI. So on our images that we have here, this is the Sony on the left and this is the Fuji on the right. Every camera is going to look something very similar to this. It's just going to have a slightly different layout or color combinations or something like that. On the Sony, you're going to see it's red for the microphone, green for the headphones, and then over here it's going to be the micro HDMI. HDMI comes in 3 different sizes. There's full size, mini, and micro. Just like USB, there's 3 different sizes for USB. And then on the top, there's a micro USB port. And on the Sony, it has the ability to use some different USB devices. For example, a timer. So if you wanted to shoot time-lapse videos or time-lapse photography, or do something that's a really, really long exposure, like say an hour or something like that, you don't have the ability to set 1 hour exposure in camera because the shutter speed options only go up to, I think, 30 seconds. So if you wanted to do something longer than that, you would need to use an intervalometer, which is a little remote control. I have one, I just didn't bring it out for this video. And it also has the ability to charge the battery inside the camera through the USB port. So if you wanted to not take your battery out and charge it, you can just plug that into a USB port and it'll charge. It can also use like a cell phone battery charger, so that if you were shooting, say, videos or something like that, you could power your camera through that cell phone charger and keep it powered for a really long period of time. So again, if you were shooting time lapse and you were shooting it over, hours and hours, you would want to keep your battery charged because these batteries are very small. So the ability to charge this from an external source is actually very, very useful, and I've used it many times. And then there's a little imprint on here that says plug-in power, and that's actually for microphones. It can provide what's called phantom power to an external microphone. You'll notice on here that there's a ridge around, it's easier to see on the Fuji. There's a ridge around the ports, and that is for weather sealing. If you were to keep that door open or remove that door, because it is capable of being removed, that would kill the weather sealing because water could get inside those ports. So it's important to keep that door on there, especially when you're in weather conditions. Don't just remove it because you like to have things open and accessible. That's not a good idea. Okay, that's it for Unit 3 of Camera Basics. We talked all about the body, the buttons, the rear screen, touch screens, the viewfinder, and the diopter adjustment. Also, the audio video ports that are available on most camera bodies. I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, keep shooting.